Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Founders in Flight. I'm super excited for you to meet Ross Paterson today. Ross is one of my neighbors right down the street here in North Texas, and him and I have had a chance to interact before, but I'm excited for you guys to be a fly on the wall in our conversation today about anything and everything related to being a founder. We talk about what it's like to actually start up a business. We talk about all the things that he's learned in consulting clients and his journey of starting a business. He's been a business consultant for over 30 years. And so just would encourage you to stay tuned, really learn a lot from what Ross has to share, and hopefully bring a lot of fulfillment to you in this episode. Ross, so excited to have you here on the podcast today, and just grateful for the opportunity to sit down with you. You and I have known each other for a few years now.
Sure.
You've actually done some coaching with my team back, what was that, maybe 2-3 years ago?
Yeah.
And really enjoyed that experience. And you and I have had a chance to sit down just a few times, but this will probably be our most concentrated conversation. I'm excited.
It might be. Yeah. I'm looking forward to it. I love watching your work. I think we've been over here when you first moved into the new place, and I remember when we met you at the Lyft office,
yeah,
and you were still working in the tech thing before you launched this, right? So you're like,
totally,
that's not what I want to be when I grow up. And this Mallard agency came 100%. Out of that.
We've been in 5 co-working spaces, if I remember correctly, and 3 different buildings, but 5 different actual offices within co-working spaces. So it takes a lot of moving before you can actually get into a permanent space, as you know.
Well, yeah, you got to create some revenue and some profitability.
100%. Let's talk about it. Well, before we get too deep, tell me, can you just tell us your story, your origin story, if you will, to give us the lay of the land as who is Ross and what do we need to know about your journey thus far?
Okay. Yeah. I'm a Virginian by birth, grew up in the East Coast. I was able to go to college on an Army scholarship, right? So that's how I got to go to college, and then spent 6 years on active duty in the Army as an infantry officer. So, I learned to serve, I learned to lead, and I didn't know it at the time, but in the Army, they give you a bunch of different assignments, right? So you do something for 12 months and then 18 months, 12 months. So you always get to do something new, which really energized me. And then I got bored and I took a job in corporate America. And again, I got these assignments where I worked for GE, I worked in the locomotive construction, I worked manufacturing, and then appliance, and then got to run a little joint venture called GE Sports Lighting Systems, and got my taste for small business there.
That's valuable experience.
Yeah, it was a beautiful, messy, stressful startup with a lot of different joint venture partners who had different agendas.
Yeah,
so it was challenging, but fun. I like that, right? I think everybody who's an entrepreneur is a little bit of an adrenaline junkie. They like to go try hard stuff.
You have to be.
Yeah. Anyway, and I really felt like for a while I was wrestling with my identity a little bit about, hey, why am I here? What's the big question, right? Yeah. So I left the business world for a while and just got full time into the nonprofit world. That was my first startup that I instigated.
What year was that?
2003.
Okay, got it.
So we started doing some mobilization for some sustainable development in some places like Afghanistan, Indonesia,
amazing,
Africa. And then, one of the challenges there was the fundraising piece. We had some really cool projects that were going on in Afghanistan at the time. And I just wanted to say, hey, all this money we're taking to support the stateside team could probably go right into the projects if I could start, a business that would sustain Team Paterson, et cetera. Anyway, and so that's, I had done some consulting internally with GE. I'd done some consulting in the bridge to the nonprofit. And so I thought, maybe I could start a business that would be sustainable for that. And at the time, the vision was, hey, what if some of my donors who were mostly small business owners became my clients? And then what if my future clients got engaged in this international development work with us as we went on that journey together? And that's exactly what happened over the next 10 years. We had one digital marketing agency that ended up helping us start a business in Afghanistan to start employing guys and girls there with some meaningful work. So it was pretty wild.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow. That's crazy. Now, walk me through the transition from the nonprofit into XM.
Yeah. Crazy, sometimes you think, how do you get there? But I think every entrepreneur has that story somewhere of surviving the train wreck and then, rising up
Sure.
to fix the next thing.
We'll just hope the train wreck's not coming down.
Yeah. Well, the first advice I give you is, hey, don't start your business the year before the worst recession.
Yes. Yeah. I wouldn't.
Man has known.
Yeah.
So 2007 was a bad time to start. And I had a partner who started with me, and his background was marketing and sales, and mine was the consulting and training and delivery things. And so we thought, hey, what a perfect partnership. And then right after we hired an office manager, well before we needed one, he gave up and just kind of bailed out. Like, hey, I'm out. I can't do this. I got to go get a job. And I was like, oh, okay. And
now you're left with this thing.
Now I have this thing. I wish we'd have decided that, the month before we hired the office manager instead of the month after we hired the office manager.
Yes,
so,
I can empathize with that.
So anyway, so then the only option was, hey, I had learned how to market and sell. It was a real stretch for me. I'd stretched myself pretty hard working on fundraising, right? Asking people for money. But in general, I was asking for money for these big, really meaty projects that were going on in a pretty desperate place. So it was easy for me to ask for that money. And then later, selling was hard. And we bought this franchise, and I bought my partner who left out of it. So at least I didn't have to convince everybody. I already knew what I was doing. We had this process that we could sell that was pretty well tested. But I just was really, really, really terrible. And at sales, right? And so it was a struggle.
Yeah.
It was a struggle. And then, of course, selling, coaching, and consulting services in the middle of the worst recession ever also challenging.
That's a tough sale.
It was tough. Yeah, things were tough.
Especially if you're not a natural salesperson.
Is anybody a natural salesperson?
Oh,
maybe.
Well, I suppose that's a good question to ask. Maybe not right out of the gate, but certainly people who, like for me, for example, like whenever I first got started, I never really thought of myself that way. I was in account services in an advertising agency setting.
Yeah.
And I don't think I really ever thought of myself as a salesperson, maybe even a year or two into the agency. But what I realized was that there were some transferable skills that were really helpful. But without that context, certainly not. Like naturally, a salesperson is hard to do. I think one of the key things that I felt, because I've tried to start other businesses in the past, and I've tried to latch myself onto products that I wasn't necessarily as passionate about that as I am right now. And I think I discredited the amount of value that it has for me to really be passionate about what I'm selling.
True.
And if I'm really believe in it and I'm passionate about it, I have this like personal affinity for it. That just comes through.
I think that's true. But I also think the Olympics are going on right now, and you watch these athletes do these incredible things, and nobody saw the work they do. And so we think, hey, this person's natural.
Totally.
You see somebody who's good at sales.
Totally.
And my instinct always was, from my early career, was like, find the people who look like they know what they're doing and go take notes, and so that's exactly what I did. This guy figured out this sales thing. So maybe he can teach me, And so, out of desperation, before I had any money to pay for it, I realized, hey, I got to go invest in some consultative sales training and coaching, or this business is never going to get anywhere. Right.
Totally.
But I agree with your point earlier is that, I was just talking to some business owners at lunch today, and they've lost their passion. They've lost their joy for their business. So they're having a hard time bringing the mojo to kind of get it out of this plateau they're on. And I think, that's certainly one of the keys for me was like, hey, I really feel like I have a lot of joy in helping people level up. And that's kind of probably the one thing I'm here for. I really help people find their full potential.
That's awesome. So speaking of that, for somebody who isn't familiar with XM Performance, just to lay the groundwork, and what is it that you do? Who do you serve? And give us the fifth grade version of what your business does.
Yeah. Well, I think, our big idea, like our big why at XM Performance is, hey, what if we could make small and medium businesses the best places to work in America? Hey, they're well led. The owner leads with his head and his heart, right? So it's about more than just the money. Hey, but we have to make money too. And so we're looking for those, whether that comes from a faith-based entrepreneur kind of perspective or a conscious capitalistic perspective. Those people who want to do good with their business are who we want to serve, right? And we want their business to be so healthy that, hey, their employees on Sunday night are going, I can't wait to get to see my team on Monday. And they go home most Fridays, hey, we made a difference, right? So it really takes those kind of businesses don't build themselves. So it takes some real intentional design, takes some strong leadership for that to happen. And then, the things we're really good at, helping create some strategic focus. This well. The role of the owner evolves significantly as you go from startup to founder,
Ooh, I want to talk
to foundation,
about that.
to growth, to transition, right? What your job looks like changes, and you have to evolve, and you have to let go of some things that you're probably really good at. And so who do we serve? Big vision, big heart owners who are thirsty, right? So they're still learners. They usually get a big ROI from an investment with us, and we work with some really big tier 1 clients who are $800 million general contractors with 300 or 400 employees. And we work with $3 to $5 million companies that are trying to get to 10, right? When that owner gets to that point where he can't call every play anymore, I got to build a leadership team. We got to get a system in place. We got to level up in a lot of ways. Those are kind of some of our favorite challenges to solve. That's
awesome. Well, I resonate with the audience that you serve because I serve them too. And I've never been more fulfilled like in the people that I get to work with every day from a client perspective, and also my team. But from my client perspective, the audience that you've outlined, they're just, I call them purpose-driven founders.
Sure.
And people who, I love how you put it, lead with their head and their heart, people who want to do good with their business, but they are lifelong learners. They're, just infectiously curious, and they just, will kind of never stop. But also a lot of them have a lot that I learned from, people who have good balance, prioritize their family, have allow their faith to really step into their business and guide it and lead it. I really admire that about this group of people that you and I get to serve every day, which is awesome. The one thing that you were talking about in there that I mentioned I wanted to talk more about is the ever-changing, I guess, role of a founder in a business. I would be curious to hear what are you observing whenever you say stuff like that? What do you see when you talk to your clients, and what do you think people should learn from that if they're stepping into the entrepreneurial journey for the first time or they're early on?
Well, I think when you're the startup guy, you do everything.
Yeah.
You might be in your living room, garage, whatever that startup looks like for you. If you don't have a rich uncle, I didn't have a rich uncle, right? So we started it from the living room. Which was good because when the recession hit, our overhead was pretty low. Yeah. Anyway, but I think, that startup guy is a hustle and grind. I got to go do everything and move stuff. And then, when the foundation starts to get settled, now I have to be a delegator. I have to break things down, right? And I think, at the lowest rung, there's administrative work that goes on with the business that you need to get yourself out of, right? I don't know anybody who wrote a book about their breakthrough as an entrepreneur because they got the level 10 badge in QuickBooks. Yeah. So you need to understand cash flow, but you don't have to be a good bookkeeper.
Yeah, totally.
And so at the administrative level, and at some point operationally, you got to get yourself out of day-to-day operations, and then depending upon the business model, marketing, and then sales, and then leadership, right? And so you just kind of have to think about what that happens. So where I see people struggle is, hey, if you come out of a natural sales background, when you start your business, you'll really struggle with operations and building the team and getting things done. And then we have ACE professionals who are architects and engineers and IT, even medical and lawyers who love doing the work, but doing the work and running the business are radically different. And when I tell that person, hey, you got to learn marketing sales, I don't want to learn marketing sales. I'm like, okay, you should probably go work for somebody who does, because it's very difficult to, even to manage an agency like Mallard. I got to know enough about marketing and sales, or I'll be a terrible customer for you.
Right.
And because I'll say, oh, well, why aren't my sales up?
Yeah.
And you say, well, you didn't hire Mallard to close deals for you, did you?
Yeah.
I'm like, well, no. And so, so some of those things, hey, we meet entrepreneur owners all the time who are technical in their nature, and they probably can't articulate well, hey, the difference between marketing and sales. And I read an alarming statistic the other day, like 82% of the people in the workforce are being led and managed by people who have never been trained to lead and manage.
Wow.
So, leading people and delegating work and giving people feedback and pulling the team together, raising that collective intelligence of your team, that you don't come out of the womb knowing how to do that, right? You got to learn how to do that. And pretty soon you get 20 or 30 people on your team. Hey, it doesn't matter how much work you can do anymore. It doesn't matter.
Totally.
And you got to kind of put this old toolbox down and you got to pick up this new one. Well, I don't know, put it down. You got to give this old toolbox away to different people now. Maybe some things that you're really good at. You're creative. And so like sometimes delegating the creative can be hard for you. Like, I'd have done that different.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
It's so funny you're mentioning this. Have you read the book Who Not How?
I'm familiar with it.
Okay,
I haven't
the
read
concept.
it. Yeah.
I mean, the title does a pretty good job of explaining what the concept is.
And I'm, of course, familiar with who's the guy?
Ben Hardy or Dan Sullivan.
Dan Sullivan is the
Dan Sullivan, and then
entrepreneurial coach of
the cool part of that book is that the introduction introduces the concept, of course.
Yeah.
And then it explains why Ben Hardy wrote the book for Dan Sullivan. Yeah. Because he's a better who to do the writing.
Sure.
Whereas Dan was the better who to do the actual thought leadership.
Yeah.
I thought that was really, I liked how they, I guess, drank from their own medicine for that. And it really but the reason I bring it up is I read that about 2 weeks ago, and I was just chatting like maybe 45 minutes ago with my director of brand management, Dan. And I found myself going to him and saying, hey, I have this idea. I see this thing. I really think we should be doing it differently for a client. And here's a bunch of ideas, and here's exactly how I would do it. Now let's go get started. I caught myself, and I was like, wait a second. Dan is much better at what I'm doing right now. And so I stopped and I said, Dan, I'm going to stop mid-sentence and just say to you, this is a real story, by the way, just that I need to just be self-aware and note that I'm not doing my job right now. And my job is to help equip you to do the best possible job for these clients, and I trust you. Yet I will also, I want you to be eagerly pursuing my feedback on how we're doing in that account. And I'm going to let you lead, and I'm going to let you run. If you ever need ideas, feel free to come to me, but I trust you. And I think that is the thing, that tangible, that moment of catching myself is what I didn't do for the first 3 years. Yeah. Maybe even the last time you and I chatted more, substantively, I would say I was maybe like right in the middle of that switch. Do you know what I mean? I do know what you mean. It's a struggle for everybody, I think, at some point, letting go and trusting people to do things and understanding that, hey, the important work you have to do, this new toolbox work of strategy, of getting the team aligned, of thinking about, hey, how we're going to get the next level of clients in here. If you're not working on that, there's 3 things I say the CEO, owner of the business has to do: long-term strategy and planning, get the right people in the right place, and then set the rhythms and routines that run the business. And the same thing I always say is, who's working on that when you're not? And inevitably it's like, hey, nobody's working on that if I'm not. And so, and then who's working on that if you don't know how? Yeah. which are some of the problems that we try to help solve. But your awareness, it's grown over time. But what happened probably, and this happens in all of our clients, so I don't know the history of Mallard, but what happens is if you can't overcome that instinct, the really good, strong A players are going to leave. And because they don't want to be micromanaged. Totally. They need that freedom to be themselves, and you need to be the one who goes, hey, you have permission to do this. And can I ask for permission to give some input? And you just need to make sure that you kind of stay in your lanes and let people do some things like that. And I can be pretty driven, and but my team's pretty comfortable giving me the direct feedback about, am I doing this? Are you doing this, Ross? I'm like, oh, totally. I think with that that relationship of your team managing up to you in such a way to where they feel comfortable to give that feedback. I think this is a nuance, but early on, I think I thought that all I had to do was verbally say to my team, you can feel comfortable giving me feedback. You know that, right? And after I said that, expecting them to just to believe me and to do it. And what I didn't realize is that where I actually was accomplishing what I was trying to accomplish by saying that to them and giving that to them, the directive is the first time they give me feedback, how do I react?
Yeah.
And the second and the third and the fourth. And I think I received it, but I think I pushed back more than I probably should have given than I probably noticed in the moment upon reflection.
Sure.
And I think that it's really, I always admire teams who have this. I admire leaders and teams who function in a way to where the leader gets consistent feedback in a way that's truly constructive, not complaining, but truly constructive. That's in an effort to make them better at their job. And I mostly admire that because it took the leader receiving feedback on a regular basis and proving to his team, his or her team, that that they actually will receive it well. That's why the team feels comfortable to do it in the first place. It doesn't matter if you tell them to do it and they if the first time they do it you shut it down, it's not going to necessarily work.
Yeah. I think I coach people all the time, owners of companies, to just use this simple phrase: hey, is there anything I can do or stop doing that would make it easier to work with me? You know, and the first time you ask them that question, they might not answer. They might not feel comfortable answering that.
Right.
But if you have some coaching or a session with them or working on something, I say, hey, I want you to know, Sean, hey, is there anything I can do or stop doing to make it easier to work with me? Please give me that feedback. Right. And just ask it repeatedly until they do. And then what you said is exactly true. Make sure you don't overreact when they do give you that feedback.
Hey, totally. You'll shoot yourself in the foot for sure. You work so hard to get there, you might as well let it be.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's so unusual though. Like we had a new employee, an office manager. And at the end of our 30-day kind of onboarding coaching session, I said, hey, is there anything I can do or stop doing that to make it easier to work with me? And she looked at me like, I'm not answering that question. You know?
There's no way.
And she'd been in a very toxic place before. It was not safe to give the owner of the company she worked for before any kind of feedback or pushback or, hey, I have a better way.
Yeah.
And so it took her 60 days to get comfortable with that. And then I remember her teaching one of the new teammates coming on board, like, just tell him. Yeah. Just tell him what you want. He'll do it. You don't believe me. I'm true, but it's true.
That's awesome. That's always fun to see. Tell me, in your in the current state of your business, you as a leader, less of you coaching others and more your journey of an entrepreneur and where you currently sit today. What are some of the challenges that you're facing right now? Like just assuming you're willing to go there.
Yeah. No.
What's going on in your world?
I think our client profile is changing a little bit, and I have an intense desire to, there's a lot of people that do what I do in their one-man offices, or they have a very strict model that they force everywhere, and I don't want to do that, right? I want to be a very structure-less approach. And so there's a couple of things that have been difficult. The consultative sales is difficult to reproduce.
Totally.
I studied it really hard for about 5 years to get good at it, and I forgot how hard it was. So now we're having a little trouble reproducing that, right? And probably the best salesperson I've ever had on my team is a teammate, Fanny Gambaro. She's worked with us for about 8 years, and she came in and said, I'm not doing marketing and sales. And I said, okay, that's fine, because I have these other 3 people. They need to do a lot more marketing and sales than your job is to make sure we have lots of time to do that, right? And so it's a very complex sale, right? And so you can't just hire a guy who's done B2B product or service sales, because it's not the same conversation with the business owner. So that's been difficult. We're making some progress on that. And then I've been doing the consulting in a lot of different contexts for probably 30 years. And so there's some things that like I can just see because of the wisdom that's hard to reproduce. So there's this, hey, I need to get some of this stuff out of my head. Yeah. And the 10 things problems we solve the most, we're starting to put some playbooks together. And, so that I can have an apprentice consultant go with me. And I can go, hey, watch one, do one, teach one, right? Kind of.
What are the skills you look for in, because both of those things you just mentioned, consultative sales as well as consulting.
Yeah.
Both of those revolve around somebody who's great at, I'm going to call it unhindered strategy, intuitive strategy.
Yeah.
What are some of the things, and in order for you to grow, in order for me to grow, I've been thinking about this a lot too. How do I, especially with AI and just like my clients are basically demanding that we be excellent at strategy. That's the key thing that I think that we really bring to the table. I actually was just chatting with the guest before you. Him and I sat down for lunch after his podcast recording, and we were talking about, I was like, tell me about your experience so far. He's a client of mine, and he was saying, the art that you guys produce is super valuable and fun, and the stories that you guys tell through videos, great, and the websites and all of that. But if you guys weren't able to actually take our business model and simplify it down to language that my internal team and my external clients understand, then it wouldn't have been worth it.
Right.
And I'm like, okay, then we got to be able to grow a team that can do that at scale.
Right.
So that's kind of what you're saying. What do you look for in talent, in people, whenever you're trying to grow in that way? What are some of the skill sets you look for?
I think we've had some success because we work in small and medium businesses. People who've lived there, have lived in that space, have made a better transition. For us also, like, there's two things, like, they got to love people enough to, like, hey, we got to help people when they're hurting. So there's got to be some instinct about, hey, I want to help people get better. And I don't know, like, some people, we've had a couple people come and go from our business who wanted to be that consultant or a trainer or a leadership coach, or they wanted that for them more than they wanted it for the people they serve.
Yeah.
Right. And anytime that ego is that high, it's going to be a problem. And then, and I think you said the word intuitive. And I think there's two things that are kind of difficult. I need to assess them when I'm hiring. Is like, hey, do they have initiative and they have an intuition about what needs to happen next, and I can show them the form. And so we can simplify a lot of the complex things we do down to a starting point. But every organization is pretty radically different, but humans aren't. And so the humans that are in the organization are the same. And there's some things we know about humans and organizational performance that are pretty simple that other people don't know. Like, just think about this. 82% of the people going to work every day are being led by a leader or manager who's never been trained for that job and doesn't understand the basics of that. Now, in your small business, here's what happens. Hey, here's this person who's been here for 8 years. So, hey, they really know me. They really know our clients. They know our business. So I'm going to make her the manager of this department. And all of a sudden, she's terrible. In the other example, they do this all the time. Hey, we make this salesperson the sales manager, and this person you just lost your best salesperson, and you just hired a terrible sales manager.
Totally.
And it's a debacle. So our people are curious about people and organizational health, and they've been in good places and bad places before, so they know the difference. And it's really quite a mix on how our teams come together over the years. One guy is a professional trainer, but he comes from such a positive, passionate, help people perspective. It was easy to teach him to be more curious. Right. I say our best consultants are competent and they're curious and they can connect. Because if you're competent and you solve one problem, then the clients will be like, oh, I got a lot of other problems. Hey, can you help us with this one? And I'm like, well, I can't help you with that one, but Sean and the Mallard team can help you with that one. And we just got to be, you want to be in that position where you're the trusted advisor. So can they give that trusted advisor role? Because that's not the I know everything role. It's like I know all the answers. That's not what they're looking for. They're like, hey, can you help me relieve this pain? I don't want you to come run my company. I want you to help me solve these problems. So it's an interesting mix, and small business owners and their teams handle things radically different on purpose. Our kinds of clients, the compassionate ones that you're talking about, they're in business for a different reason. So it's not just like top four, the Fab Four of consulting, KPMG consultants coming in and going, here's the structure, here's the pay grade, this is what you got to do, this, here's the answer, just do this, here's my playbook. That's almost never how our engagements go.
Right.
You know?
Totally.
Yeah.
I feel like thinking about what are the things about a strategist that make them really great? Like practically speaking, I always try to reverse engineer it. And like the common denominators that I've seen are the best strategists I've worked with are the ones who can ask the best questions.
It's all about the questions.
They got to be able to ask the best questions and be they can't just be interested in being curious. They have to actually be like professionally curious.
Absolutely.
And then the second thing I would say is that they should be able to regurgitate back to somebody like a complex answer. Whenever you ask a really great question, a complex answer comes out of the client or whoever's across the table from you.
Right.
And whenever you should be able to listen to that and then regurgitate it back to them in a way that's much more simple and much more brief. And I feel like if you can, and then wait and listen to see if you got it right or not, and actually be curious enough to say, I'm going to say back to you exactly what you just said to me in a way that I think is what you said, but I want you to confirm, here's how I heard you. It actually is this little bit of nuance. Perfect. Let's explore that a little bit more.
Yeah.
That to me is where I feel like truly, like I almost feel silly saying that it's that simple because in my mind, it's sometimes I think I deal with this idea of like strategy to me feels inherent. Like it feels inherent. It feels like something that it's just naturally what I do, you know? But, and so therefore I almost discredit it in my mind in terms of its power. But the truth of the matter is that it is so powerful to be able to take complex things and make them simple. And it's also an amazingly powerful thing to be able to uncover complex things. And I'm curious if you have any thoughts or things you would add on top of that.
I like the complexity of strategy, right? I tell business owners all the time, hey, there's nothing really so complicated about anything we do individually that you can't figure it out, right?
Right.
The complexity comes when you have to be 6 inches deep in 134 places, right? That's the complexity for the business owner. And so there's some cornerstones of strategy, right? I think in the end, if you can simplify strategic planning down to, hey, why are we here? What makes us better, unique, and different in the marketplace? Where are we now? Where are we going?
Yeah.
Who's responsible for what?
Simple question.
How are we going to get there, right? There's 6 questions. And when you simplify it down to just 6 things and say, hey, let's just get some really clear, concise, and compelling answers to these 6 things, then the plan can emerge from that.
Indeed.
But sometimes people haven't laced that together, or they think strategy is this big complex thing that only, people with PhDs from Harvard understand. And it's just not true. I always tell people, when I was in the Army, I was in the infantry, right? And you know who they put in the infantry? The people who are stronger than they are smart, right? And so, hey, so everything we did had to be really simple and reproducible. And so, I think small businesses like that. And a lot of times we have the simple things about strategy wrong and not aligned. And we have what I call business owners phantom clarity. They think they know what they want, and they think they've communicated clearly what they want, and nobody in their team has any idea what they want.
100%. I feel like I see that every day is kind of the way it feels.
Yeah. Anyway, and so there's some repetition and things involved in fixing that. And so, hey, I was always think, hey, move from simple to complex. Hey, most of the time when we're in organizations that are not performing at their potential, there's some simple things that aren't right. And when we can get the simple things lined up, then the more complex things become easier in general. So, I think one of our unique approaches in the marketplace is I'm not so stuck with the model. We come in and we'll make an honest assessment with the owner or leadership team, like, hey, what's really the biggest opportunity, or what's the most pressing obstacle? We can't work on everything at one time. So, one owner was like, hey, we've grown significantly. Our revenue generating machine, our performance is high. But if we get we're already losing our culture. And so I don't want to get any bigger if we're going to sacrifice our culture to do that. I'm like, oh, this is one of my favorite problems to solve. Yeah. So I said, hey, what is your culture?
Yeah, right. Totally.
And so he has some ideas that, of course, as a founder, they're in his heart. But every time he talked about them, he uses little different words. And so he thought that the culture language was nailed. And so I was training 11 of his executives, and I had the guys who'd been there for 2 years in one corner, the guys who'd been there for 5 or 6 years in one corner, and the people that'd been there for 10 years in another corner. I go, hey, just write up on the wall the culture here, right? And we had 3 very different charts, right? So when I put that in front of the CEO, I go, I think we got a language problem.
Yeah.
And he didn't believe me until you show him, right?
Well, you have to be able to, I feel like what you did there is you made an invisible problem visible.
Exactly. And that's one of our favorite things to talk about, because, man, once you get to a certain point and the founders can't be the culture bearers anymore, we got to have new culture champions, man. You have to codify a language. You have to teach people how to be culture champions, right? You really have to build it into the systems and structure of the organization for that to be a multiplier. But we have probably a dozen of our clients over the last 15 years who have really nailed that at a critical growth point. And it was the multiplier that allowed them to go, oh, hey, we can make an acquisition in Lubbock because we know the culture we want, and we can go teach them how to live like we want to live, right? And we can do that in a small business, but hey, the best companies in the world work on that really hard too. Chick-fil-A, Southwest before the private equity buyouts.
Totally.
Yeah.
I remember whenever you and I sat down at your office and you drew something on a whiteboard and it was the stages of entrepreneurship. Are you familiar with what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. We draw it all the time. I remember your response.
What did I say?
You said, I feel seen for the first time.
That sounds like me.
I feel understood for the first time in my life. Yeah.
That the thing that reminded me of it is I was probably doom scrolling on Instagram or something, and I saw I want to say it was Alex Hormozy. I'm not totally sure. I don't remember who it was, but somebody was drawing a similar chart of this initial viability followed by this, oh my gosh, what's happening? Almost like as if you're coming over the other end of the roller coaster, and then you get to the bottom and you're like, it's this moment of I'm going to quit or I'm going to keep going. Or it was similar. But walk me through the stages that you see for a founder, if you don't mind. And then I'll have questions from there. But
sure. Well, there's a startup mode, and you can't teach an entrepreneur anything in the startup mode because they think they already know everything.
100%.
Yeah.
They finally have reached the pinnacle.
Yeah, they're it's like trying to teach a 23-year-old man anything, right? They already know everything. Somewhere between 23 and 35, they figure out they got a lot to learn anyway. And so in the startup mode, they don't know what they don't know yet. And so they're hustling and they're grinding. They got a great idea and they might be getting some traction. And then at some point, startup turns into foundation building. Hey, we're going to put some cornerstones. We're going to start laying out this foundation that we can grow from. And then, once that's happening, we get into growth mode. And so growth mode really means, hey, we have to take our business development, our marketing and sales, and we have to multiply that. So we have to have a marketing and sales system that consistently drives revenue. And now we have to get more people doing that in more places the right way. And then once that revenue starts going up, then it becomes a leadership and organizational problem, right? And I have to start leading teams of people. I have to start, and even more complex when we get higher is I have to lead through leaders, which is about 10 times more complex than leading a team. And so there's just a level of complexity that goes up in that, right? And the skills and what the owner's role in that business is several things. And the last stage, I call it T, it's a transition stage. And in that transition stage, you could transition by multiplying your business into another realm. You might sell your business and exit, right? You might, if you're like you and me, we might use our first business to fund our next big idea, I call it, right? But it doesn't really matter if you want to multiply it or sell it or use it to fund your next business. To get to that point where you can build up to where, hey, I can be the CEO of this business and most of the processes run without me. And we have playbooks and we have people who run things. There's a bunch of who, not how going on. And we've built that system, process, and structure of that business. Now we have some options that we don't have in the startup foundation growth phase because, hey, we have a business now. And
where do you see most people getting stuck most often? Obviously there's vulnerabilities in every stage. But
sure.
Where do you see there being kind of that most significant amount of turmoil happening?
I think in startup and foundation, they don't build a network of other entrepreneurs, right? They don't have anybody to tell them, hey, have you really looked at that from over here? Have you really looked at that idea from over here? There's an old saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I go, well, unless your strategy is, VCR repair, then it doesn't matter.
Yeah, right.
It doesn't matter how good your culture is. Your strategy is going to starve your culture to death. So anyway, so there's no one thing. So like, I think at some point you think that there's a little bit of ego, and it's like, oh, I've worked for other people before, I can do it better.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you just have no idea how complex that really is when you get into the business ownership role. And so in the startup and foundation phase, it's like, hey, there's not enough outside perspective on what you're doing. And so you can really get trapped, accidentally isolated to fresh ideas and how things really what's going to create that breakthrough. Once you get your foundation built, you can do that with your network, with some previous work relationships, whatever. But at some point for your business to scale, you got to master marketing and sales and business development. So learning how to do those things well enough so that I can even delegate that work or outsource it to an agency like yours. I've seen a lot of people spend a lot of money with no ROI because nobody from the agency asks the strategic questions. Hey, what are we really trying to do here? Right? They're like, hey, do you have pay-per-click ads? I don't. You need them.
Yeah.
I'm like, why do I need them?
Yeah.
They haven't even asked me about my client.
Yeah,
yet,
right. Totally.
And so somewhere at that, as you're transitioning from foundation to growth, if you can't really master marketing and sales and understand how business development works for your client and your market space, you're in trouble, right? You're probably going to plateau right about there. And then, when it starts growing, if you can't develop as a leader of people and processes and pick up that new toolbox of leadership, you're going to stall out there, right? Because things are going to start breaking down. Because it's all still a little dependent on you maybe, and you're making all the calls on the shots. And then, and then I think at the highest level, can you really hire vice president, general manager level people into your organization and maintain the culture, right? So there's this real battle you got to have if you're bringing outside talent in at the highest levels to make sure we vetted them for culture alignment first. And then you really have to be intentionally, like 5 years before you need it, you need to develop that high potential young man or woman into your COO, but you have to be doing that intentionally because like if you grow really fast and they're not ready for that, you can't microwave that. You can't microwave that leadership wisdom.
Right. I see that. I mean, it's probably one of the hardest things that I've had to do in my journey is, and I feel like it's almost like you have to go through seasons of trying, failing, learning, just like any other thing, but it just happens to involve people in this case.
It's hard, isn't it?
It is so hard.
I tell people all the time, like I've lost a lot of money on some deals that didn't go well.
Yeah.
But, I lose sleep over, hey, I got to have a really tough conversation with somebody that's going to be potentially life-changing for them when I tell you, hey,
totally,
you're not going to make it.
Well, and it's like once you've gotten to the place to where you've actually first learned what you just shared and then embraced it, then made a decision to hire somebody based off of that. And then some factor, whether it is in regards to your leadership and trusting them to implement what you were, hopefully delegating to them to execute, or they're, in a biz dev capacity, maybe it's like their inability to be able to, sell enough revenue to hit their commission goals and get to their on-track earnings. Like practically speaking, that is one of the things that I think in business development for businesses our size that can be really challenging is kind of like, how do I set up a commission structure in a way that protects the business but simultaneously keeps this person here long enough for them to actually see it through, because it takes time.
Oh, absolutely.
And so I think a lot of times what I've noticed is that you establish a leadership team. Here we go. I'm delegating everything. And then why did all three of them leave? All of a sudden now I'm back in the saddle of execution, back in the saddle of sales, here we go, marketing, like all these different things are now I'm back. And then you almost get so busy because you get thrown back into the ocean that you have to wait 6 months before you even try again. Then you bring in more leadership team and then that bails and then you have to do it again. And I think that what I've learned along the way is that every single time there's some sort of lesson that can be applied to the next time you try.
Absolutely.
And probably actually multiple things, not just one singular thing. And the important thing is to, in my case, like speaking, I like practical next steps. I document it so that whenever it gets down to the actual, I'm onboarding a new leadership team member and this person is a significant investment for me and I'm trusting them with significant portion of my business. Like, what did I learn last time? Because honestly, I probably have forgotten. And so I try to document that. I try to be honest with whoever's coming into my organization and say, this is something I've struggled with in the past. This is what I've learned from it. Here is what I want you to watch out for in me. And I want you to feel comfortable coming to me. Please try to do that and see how I react. And then watching out for myself whenever they do actually come back and give me that feedback inevitably to actually be able to receive that well and to remember that that's what I had asked them to do. Obviously not a perfect science because I'm in the midst of it. You're in the midst of it. So many others are in the midst of it. But one of the key learnings for me, have you learned anything about how to delegate well, how to learn from those successes and failures of trying to get others to do that?
Yeah, you know what? We have a really unique perspective on that because like, hey, we're working with 30 or 40 businesses a year. So I don't just get my reps.
Totally.
I get to watch hundreds of reps every year, right? So we watch people struggle with these things. I think first I would just say cultural alignment is the most important thing when you're hiring a leader because they're going to bring some culture. So if you don't have a way to assess, hey, what do they value personally and how does that line up with the values and culture of the business, you're in trouble already.
How do you assess that?
Well, for instance, one of our values is transformation, right? We want long-term transformation. We want to make a generational impact on the people in the business, right? So we want them to love working in their business so much that their kids feel it, right? And that's a big deal, right? So if people don't think big like that, I can't teach them to think like that. If people don't love people, I mean, it's really, hey, do you love people enough to really go work through some hard stuff with them and get the dysfunction flushed out of this team so that they can have the joy of work coming back again? If they don't even think like that, then I can't teach them to think like that. We really have a value of, hey, deliver results, right? We call it give extreme value, and so I don't ask people, hey, one of our values is give extreme value first. I would ask you, hey, Sean, what's one of the most fulfilling things you've ever done at work? And I want to hear somebody who went above and beyond what the customer wanted and took the extra steps to go deliver more than they were supposed to, right? And I don't give them the answers, but I'm asking very specific questions. You might ask somebody, hey, who's the best leader you ever worked for? Because when they describe that leader that they really enjoyed working for, they're going to tell you what their values are and how they were aligned with that leader. And so it's going to flesh out some of that. Now, they might not use the same sticky language you've developed for Mallard culture words, but they're going to talk about some ideas and you're looking for that alignment in those things. And if you don't have any alignment in that, I think you're in trouble. And if you don't know how to assess for that, then you're just going to test them on their technical skills in their resume. And I would say that's probably less important than that. And then I would, it depends upon who you're interviewing. Like if you're interviewing a high level leader for a job, I might ask them, hey, Sean, what's your approach going to be the first 30 days here? I'm not going to tell them what to do the first 30 days. I'm asking them, hey, strategically, how do you as a leader come take over, insert yourself into a team and an organization, right? And I want to know how they think about that. And I'm looking for some servant leader language like, oh man, I'm going to come listen. I need to get to know people first. I need to build relationship capital. I need to build trust. I want to hear, well, tell me how you do that, right? I'm going to be listening for those kinds of things, right? There was a guy who wanted to get a promotion on one of our clients' places one time. He goes, hey, Ross, give me the title and then I'll be able to get the work done. And I said, hey, Bill, get the work done. Then we'll give you the title. And his problem was he didn't have relationship capital with the people and he thought the title was going to give him the authority to get things done in this organization. I said, hey, it's not the title. And so I'm looking for people to do that. And then I think, I've watched a lot of small business owners, they hire the expert and they're like, oh, thank God, take this from me, and they just abdicate. And I think it's probably, hey, when that guy's not doing it, you're probably the one doing it. So there needs to be a really intentional 30, 60, 90-day transition plan where we're just really going to work very closely together those first 90 days. Because one, that will accelerate them up into the role and you'll be able to step back. And two, if you hire the wrong person, you'll flush it out in the first 90 days and not wait a year to figure out you hired the wrong person. So
one of the things you were talking about like culture-based interview questions, which I think some of the people I talk to, they say, to me, Sean, like I feel like I asked all the right questions in my, because I get the chance to coach a couple of other agency owners, and they say, I feel like I have asked all the right questions. I feel like I found people who are like the perfect fit for our culture, but they just like cannot do the job. And I think one of the temptations for people who are, I'll speak for myself, people like me, is to ask questions that the way I hear myself asking the question is that it's a competency-based question, but the way that I'm asking it is actually a culture-based question. And I almost am like, I have this bias towards culture. Like I like care so deeply about culture that I'm asking so many interview questions that have to do with culture. And even the ones that I'm trying to ask about competency, I'm almost feeding them the answer in an effort to get them, because I love them from a culture standpoint. You know what I mean? What would you say to somebody who has the opposite problem of asking too many culture-based questions and not enough competency-based questions?
Well, I think it's pretty common. What we see in the small, medium business space, well, even in some of the larger companies, like, is like the candidate assessment process is just terrible, right? Oh, this is a really good guy. Well, why do you like him? He's just a good guy. You know, so that's where it goes. You know, I just have a feeling. I'm like, oh, that's a terrible way to make a good hire. So I think, you know, assessing candidates for job, I mean, if there's critical technical things they need to be able to do, test them for it.
Yeah.
You know, in the technical side of things, there's all kinds of online things we can kind of test things for. We worked with a electrical contractor, a very high-end systems integrator. And so there was everything from basic V equals I times R to PLC programming, right? That some of these high-level technicians had to be able to do. And they didn't assess them for any of that technical things. They would ask them a couple questions and they knew enough to answer them. And but they were getting guys out in the field who just weren't technically ready. And so then they just came up with this kind of incremental 10 questions. They got harder and harder, and they really aren't able to use their phones and their code books and whatever they needed. They needed to know these guys knew where to go get the information for solving these problems they see every week, every day in the field. And it was funny, you know, some guys would just get through to a certain spot, and then we knew kind of where they were. And some people would finish the whole thing so easily. And they're like, oh, technically we got the right guy.
Yeah.
But if it's critical, and you don't assess for it in the assessment in your interview process, then you're making a mistake. And be very careful about like them telling you stories about what they can do.
Yeah.
I mean, we worked with a digital marketing agency one time, and there was a guy who couldn't do any of the work himself, but he had some overseas people who could do the work. So he got hired for remote work for a couple of companies and was actually, you know, delegating the work out there. And then one day, our client needed that employee to deliver something right then.
Yeah.
And his people weren't going to be up for another 6 hours. And they figured out he was a faker. Isn't that something? Like that some of the technology now, you can really hide behind a lot of things. And so, hey, you know, how can you flesh out what they really know? If it's critical, assess it.
One of the things that, I mean, this is a good conversation, it's so pertinent for anybody who's trying to grow a business, especially in the early stages where you're bringing on your first, second, third, fourth employee type of a thing. Even for the people who are bringing on their 50th employee, I think the question always is should I invest in more talent that is less experienced, or in order to create, you know, a bench, or should I invest in high quality talent? And because whenever you have limited resources, you're kind of forced into that decision almost always. Like, it's never really, like, to me, my first hire was an entry level hire, and ended up being a great decision for me to get off the ground. My first, I don't think I had a truly experienced hire until 2.5 years in, and then learn things in every single hire I've ever made, of course. But it's really hard to invest at that level. But I feel like there's this dialogue happening in a lot of the circles that I'm a part of bringing on experienced hires as opposed to those entry level hires, and obviously case by case. But curious your thoughts on where you see the market trending, and if you have any particular advice for somebody who's in the midst of that consideration.
Yeah, I think the higher salary person you have, the the more sure you got to be that when we make that investment, we're going to get the ROI for that. Most of the time with administrative operations help, you should have already hired them. If you're bogged down with $25 an hour tasks on a weekly basis, and that's keeping you from working on the $500 tasks, you're stealing from yourself, right? So I tell people all the time, add an administrator. We call it a business accelerator, right? Because what an entrepreneur needs from that is not an EA. They need every entrepreneur needs something a little different depending upon who you are and what that person is. But that's almost the fastest way to get capacity for the owner entrepreneur is to put an administrator, project coordinator, whatever you need in place. And then, hey, if we're gonna hire a really high end person, you just gotta have a plan for that. And hey, I'm gonna spend $150,000 on this programmer or whatever. That person has to be able to, in very short order, in 90 days, take a significant chunk of work away from you, so that you can go get the next level work, right? So So a lot of times we gotta have a mapped out ROI for that, but it's always a risk. I mean, it's always a risk, and but you get good at assessing candidates and hiring them, and then especially with administrators, with an administrator, if you got a good playbook from your last administrator, it should get easier and easier to put somebody in those positions, and we can almost from our position, like we're always looking for good administrative help. Go, oh hey, we're going to put you on a 60-day trial run. And here's some things we need you to be able to do at the end of 60 days. And we just start giving them things. And we're looking for, it's almost like a working interview. We're looking for that initiative and that intuition. After they saw it happen twice, can they go figure out what happens next? Or are they going to come back and ask me, where's this? I'm like, the thing entrepreneurs are really good at is solving problems. So once you've solved problems for a decade, we know things are going to change. And then there's a little more confidence, and I have the creative ability to solve problems almost anywhere now, build teams, whatever that looks like. So I don't think the burden of being overwhelmed by that anymore doesn't really affect me. Also, like my wife and I are so aligned. Like we've lived on a lot and we've lived on a little, and that's not what brings us joy, right? Hey, we're here for more than just the money. So like, I'm not completely driven by money, but hey, I found that if you don't pay your employees, they stop coming to work. So we do have to pay attention.
That's an amazing insight.
No, well, write that down. It's probably going to be the name of my book. If you don't pay your employees, they won't come to work. So,
I love it.
Anyway, so hey, we have to pay attention to the money, but I'm not completely money driven. So like the meaning of the work. When early in my thing, if I could close a deal with anybody who could write me a check, I was pretty damn happy about that. And now we really, if we're not working for the right client, we figure that out pretty soon. We're just like, I don't think we're going to extend this engagement. We're going to give you your money back. We're not the right fit for you, right? It's not you, it's me. And so it's just not worth it anymore. And I think, I always ask somebody, hey, what's the worst thing that could happen?
Yeah.
Hey, we lose a bunch of money. We got to go get a job for a while we figure out the next thing. If that's the worst thing that could happen to you,
I think
it's not that bad, right?
Yeah.
Especially if you've got a 5 or 10 years under your belt as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, your industry changes so fast. The technology, Google, all these things that change everything about your industry. If you're not creative and if you're not willing to change, you get left behind. Yeah. And so that's one of the things we try to pay attention to, right? The beauty of our business is we work mostly on the people and the head space and the heart space. And so there's always people in every business.
Totally.
And if 82% of the people in the world have never been led or managed by anybody who knows how to do that, we got a lot of work left to do.
100%.
Yeah.
Well, the way I've been thinking about, there's just so many different opportunities that exist. We just passed 5 years in business, and we have just been thinking about, okay, what are the investments we need to make in people? What are the investments we need to make in process? What are the investments that we need to make in brand and marketing and business development? All the things. And the way I've kind of thought about it is that risk is ever present in this journey, it seems, and it's more so how you learn to deal with it over time gets a lot better, or at least hopefully, I should say. I feel like early on I thought it was life or death almost every decision I made. And maybe it was, I'm not sure, but you know,
Well, you
probably
lived.
not. We lived. We definitely lived, but it felt so drastic. And I think what's changed is reps. Because the dollar amounts are getting higher and the amount of people that are in the equation is getting higher.
Yeah.
Yet my stress levels are much lower than they used to be. And maybe I think the hope is that that's not blind arrogance, and instead that's just good practice at managing and navigating, you know, risk tolerance as it relates to business growth. What are your thoughts on that?
I think, you know, there's risk in moving forward. There's risk in growing. There's risk in staying the same, right? Like there's always risk. There's risk in keeping your job, your W-2 job, and not going for your own thing, you know? And, you know, I'm 57. And so there are a lot of people who are finished careers now and they're retiring and they're thinking, oh, I could build a business like yours. I'm like, oh, well, you can. And it's probably going to take you 15 years though. So let's get started. Right. Yeah. And, you know, and the first question I asked them, what do you know about marketing and sales? They're like, oh, I don't know anything about marketing and sales. I'm like, oh, get started there.
Yeah, yeah. For sure.
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I think sometimes, you know, we, as a business owner, you know, we think all this freedom and autonomy, it comes with this heavy burden, you know, sometimes it's just heavy. And, you know, once you got some capital, you got some money at risk, you've got a loan, you've bought a building, you're employing all these people, right? You can't just quit that and go get a job. You know, so there's a little bit of a, hey, you know, I'm committed. And the higher your commitment is, the risk is higher, I think. But, you know, what's the biggest risk, you know? The biggest risk is you live your whole life and you don't make a difference. Yeah. That's the biggest risk. So then make sure, like, what you're doing matters. You said earlier, you know, hey, do we find the joy in our work still? Go build that kind of business so that you're not working really hard and really long on something that doesn't bring you any joy. I can't imagine. Yeah. I can't imagine that task as a business owner. So
that's great.
Yeah. And then the risks don't feel as risky to me anyway. And like,
right.
And then the other thing I'll tell people, for a while I worked at GE and I would go help them recruit military officers, young military officers out of the military. And so I was kind of subcontracted under this HR team that went and did these things. I was a manufacturing operations guy at the time. And they looked at this one resume of a guy I liked, and they said, hey, he's been working in the family business for 4 years. I go, yeah, but he's got this military background. They go, yeah, but we don't hire people that have worked in family businesses for 4 years. I'm like, oh, really? Why is that? And they're like, because they won't submit to the structure of the bureaucracy of the business, right? They're not going to be a good fit. And they knew that statistically, even if that one guy might have been able to do that. And so like what I tell a business owner who's owned his business for 5 or 10 years, like, hey, there's no going back. You know, they're not going to hire you. You're going to be a terrible employee. So you got to make this work. You know?
Yeah, totally. So, yeah, you don't really have an option for sure.
You don't have no options, but it was interesting. My perspective back then was like, oh, I think that's kind of short-sighted. Yeah. But now I know, like, if I've had a couple of clients try to hire me, you know, like, oh, why don't you just come do this for us? And I'm like, number one, I have a really short attention span. And number two, I'd be a terrible employee. You know? And so
that's so funny.
So we continue to work on, you know, and I have some really good talent on our team right now too. So I'm always worried about somebody trying to take them from me. But you know, that's why you better be treating your employees better.
100%.
Yeah. And make sure they're finding the joy.
Totally.
Yeah.
Last question. And I ask this to almost every guest.
Almost everyone.
Almost. I'm trying to think of somebody I haven't. I'm trying to protect myself here, but I think I've asked everybody.
Okay.
What if there was a third member of our conversation here today who was an entrepreneur in the first year of starting their business, a founder? Maybe they have no employees. Maybe they have a couple. They're right at the very beginning of their journey. What is something that you would say to them? What's a piece of advice you would give them, an encouragement you would give them? What would be on your heart to share?
People ask me all the time, you know, should I start a business? You know, and I think there's 3 things that are just, if we don't have really simple answers to, like, hey, what problem do you solve? Who has that problem? How much is it worth for them to have you solve that problem for them, right? If they can't kind of strategically articulate their business around those 3 questions, well, then they're probably not ready. And then the other thing I will always tell them, like, hey, what's your personal financial situation? What if you don't get a steady paycheck for the next 12 to 24 months? Are you ready for that? If not, start your business as a side hustle on nights and on the weekends until you're sure you have the answers to those 3 questions right. Because hey, lack of resources will get you to quit maybe right when you just know enough to make it work, you know?
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think it always takes longer than you expect. I remember I was buying a franchise in a coaching space, and the founder of the franchise said, hey, everybody got a pretty good idea for what it's going to take time and money to get this thing started. And everybody's like, oh yeah, we think we do. And it's like, just multiply that times 3. And if you're not ready to handle that multiplied by 3, don't sign the agreement,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah.
And I thought, oh, I should have listened to him. I wasn't ready.
Yeah.
No, but it was good. It was good advice, right? So like, you can't start a business and expect, you know, you hear these stories, they write these, tales of these guys who did that, and they pay themselves very well. There was a breakthrough. They're the 0.001%. The rest of us, it takes us a little time, right? You don't know enough yet. You think you do, but you don't. And so patience is key. He makes sure that you're financially ready for this, you know, and your kind of family knows what that means as best as you can. And then go talk to, like, don't isolate yourself. Go talk to people that have been ahead of you. Most of the time, entrepreneurs are very generous. You know, hey, you asked me to come over here to do this. I'm glad to do that, right? You know, if they like to ride bikes or play golf or shoot guns, hey, go shoot guns with them.
Yeah.
and ask them questions, and they'll tell you. They don't have a lot of time, but if you go do something they love, they'll generally give you some good ideas about what's going on. So if anybody wants to go for a bike ride with me, there's the open invitation.
I may take you up on that. Well, just really appreciate all of the insight that you shared today, Ross. Really, I've always respected you for the way that you are so generous with your insights, and the way that you lead others so well. You're very intentional. You've always been somebody that locally I know that I can turn to for, whether it be us actually chatting in a room or me consuming some of your content that you put out. Really just have valued your wisdom, and grateful for the opportunity to be in community with you. Thank you for joining me today.